If you are an OG on this channel, then you probably remember that my first videos were devoted to showcasing and testing random DVD mods. By now I have deleted most of them, because they were a little too much cringe, but some of them you can actually still watch today. I feel like most of the people who are going to be watching this video should be familiar with the concept of modding, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, modding is when you crack the in-game files and, well, modify their content, hence the name. This is done in order to get a new gaming experience that otherwise would just be impossible. For example, you can give your favorite character a custom skin that's not on the official store, or you can replace one of the standard maps with a brand new one, or you can add more base kit mechanics, like for example jumping. Basically, your fantasy is the limit. I discovered the modding scene about 2 years ago. By that time, it was already in steep decline, because prior to that, Bhvr had banned modding on the live servers. This forced all mod enthusiasts to switch to other, more obscure versions of the game that weren't directly regulated by Bhvr. Basically, they had 3 options to choose from: the dev build, which was leaked through Steam in 2019, the private server version, and various old DVD builds that you see in my videos. None of these options were especially popular among the general audience, so naturally the number of people willing to create new mods significantly decreased, because what's the point if no one's gonna see them? The already existing mods were gradually becoming obsolete. Technically you could still use them, but only technically, because in practice, in order to work, they required the specific game versions they were developed for, so unless you had access to them, which of course you didn't, you were screwed. By 2021, when I first got the idea of making mod videos, a huge portion of the mod library on Game Banana, one of the primary sources for DVD mods, was already dead. So I was basically scavenging for leftovers that were still somewhat functional. Once I learned about the private server, it made things a little easier, because the modding community there was still pretty damn active. But then it died too, and that's when modding died for good. But why did the devs do us so dirty? Would this kill them to let people play with mods on the live servers? Well, the short answer is it would. For the long answer, we will need to travel even further back to the past and see how modding in DVD originated. Now, to say that I know the exact birthday of modding in Dead by Daylight would be a stretch. However, since the first mod uploaded to Game Banana dates back to the fall of 2019, I think it's fair that we start our journey from there. At that time, there were only a handful of mods, and none of them were too mind-blowing. I would even go as far as saying that they were kinda boring, because all they had to offer was alternative character and perk icons. Today, that's not even considered proper modding anymore. It's more like profile customization that anyone can do if they have basic Photoshop or even paint skills. Surprisingly, Bhvr were pretty chill about it. Chill but not excited, because while they weren't doing anything to prevent people from using mods, they made it clear that they were doing it at their own risk. Basically, they were like, look guys, you bought the game and you're entitled to have fun with it the way you want, but just in case one of your modifications accidentally triggers easy anti-cheat and something happens to your account, don't come crying to us, okay? For an average DVD indie, this would sound like a warning. However, modders aren't that easily intimidated, and they took it as an invitation, which resulted in a full-on modding boom in the spring of 2021. During that period, Game Banana was updated with batches of new mods daily. And let me tell you something, these mods were no match for their predecessors from 2019, because they were infinitely more creative and ambitious. Now with just a little bit of effort, mods allowed you to change the color palette of skins, add new textures to them, and even completely replace them with brand new cosmetic items. You could even go as far as replacing the entire character model with a model from a different game and let yourself play as Jason, Mr. X, Lady Dimitrescu, or any other character you've always wanted in Dead by Daylight. On top of it, there were now animation mods, so you could for example give survivors new emotes, make them dance like in Fortnite, and even do backflips. Yo! That was so smooth, man! How is this not official? Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, apparently not to Bhvr, because shortly after modding started to take off, they released an update that made it impossible to modify the in-game files. Well, at least not without serious repercussions. I'm not very good with the technical side of modding, so don't quote me on this, but as far as I understand, what they did was take all the files containing textures, models, and images and pack them into the so-called chunk files. These files compress the data and store it in a segmented format, meaning that just by looking at them, it's impossible to determine which character or skin they are responsible for. So in order to change something in these files, you would need to unpack them first, and that would inevitably trigger easy anti-cheat. But why did Bhvr suddenly change their opinion on modding? Well, there were 2 reasons for this. The first one is money. The thing is, in 2018, Dead by Daylight was updated with an in-game store where people could buy new characters and cosmetics, and since a huge portion of mods also focused on cosmetics, it put them in a direct competition with the store. In fact, quite often modded cosmetics looked more appealing compared to the ones from the store, because they were 100% free and style-wise didn't limit players to the dev's vision of their favorite characters. What I mean by this is that if you mained, let's say, Dwight like myself, you no longer had to worry that most of the skins that were available to you were either boring official outfits or some meme bullshit that you get for the collection and then forget that it ever existed. You could always slap on the Jordan's mod and there you go. Now you actually look more stylish than Nia herself. The only downside of the modded cosmetics was that they were client-sided, meaning that you couldn't flex with them in front of other people unless they also had this mod installed. But hey, that was still better than being stuck with 55 variations of slacks and vests. In other words, by creating custom cosmetic mods, the community was effectively stealing Bhvr's money, so getting rid of modding was a smart move for the longevity of their business. The second reason was that mods were a perfect loophole for cheaters. You see, the ability to modify the in-game files doesn't really limit you to creating mods that would only make an aesthetical difference. If you really want, you can easily use it to give yourself a crazy gameplay advantage. Like for example, how about making all corn on the farm maps transparent so that you could see your teammates and the killer better? Or maybe you struggle against the Wraith and you want to help yourself by changing his invisibility effect into a solid color so that he can never catch you off guard. Or better yet, how about you take every killer's head and attach a huge arrow to it so that it sticks above all tiles, buildings, and even trees, allowing you to keep track of them at all times. You could even write the killer's name above the arrow so that the moment you loaded into the match, you instantly knew who you were going against. Same could be done for survivors, and the effect would be no less devastating. I mean, just imagine how much easier it would make playing killer if you always saw the location of all survivors. I'm not gonna lie, back then I couldn't even imagine that mods could be used in such an outrageous way, but trust me, it was definitely a thing. Need proofs? I got you covered. On the 20th of July 2021, a Reddit user by the nickname of Chill Junkie made a post saying that if you're modding DBD to get unfair advantages, you should be banned. Attached to this post was an image of Dwight standing in front of a bear trap with a bright neon skin, which obviously was added to make traps easier to find. I personally never came across this mod, neither on Game Banana nor in any other thematic Discord servers, but taking into account how the entire community was molding about it, it definitely existed and eventually became one of the reasons behind the downfall of modding. Like I've already mentioned, after the devs made it impossible to change the in-game files on the live servers, modders had no choice but to move to alternative versions of the game, with the most prominent one being the private server. As the name suggests, the private server was managed by a group of individuals who were in no way, shape, or form affiliated with Bhvr. This allowed them to create a perfect infrastructure for running mods. Not only was it now completely risk-free, but it was also super easy and intuitive. All you needed to do was to go to their Discord server, browse the mod library, download the mod you needed, and install it using their launcher. But that's not even the best part. The real selling point of the private server was the quality of their mods. They were so high effort that compared to them, even what Bhvr released officially looked like some amateur crap at best. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, here are a couple of examples. First of all, the Red District mod. The Red District is a custom map developed by Hazno. Basically, it's a huge city with multiple streets and 2 floors that's just oozing the cyberpunk aesthetics. Because of it, it was quickly nicknamed the unofficial Tricksters map. Not that he had something to do with cyberpunk, but all these neon signs and buildings definitely suit him very well. In fact, when developing this map, Hazno included a little Easter egg that references this killer.
What? I just heard... Dude, I can hear Trickster music.
So I guess in the private server universe, considering this map as the Tricksters map is actually canon. Next up is the Fabrica mod. It's a classic outdoor map with an industrial theme, which I've always felt like it could be a perfect addition to the Macmillan Estate realm. It's basically what Ironworks of Misery should have been if Bhvr weren't so lazy. Even though personally I like it a lot less compared to the Red District, it's still one of the best mods ever created for Dead by Daylight. The Prop Hunt mod. This is when we're getting into the territory of the game modes. What this mod does is it takes Fangmin's cosmetics and replaces them with objects found on different maps. So if you equip them, you can play for example as a Haddonfield bench, a stack of hay from Coldwind Farm, a bunch of tires from Auto Haven Wreckers, a totem, a hook, a chest, a locker, and so on. Technically, this mod doesn't unlock any gameplay mechanics, so calling it a mode is a little bit of a stretch. However, with just a little bit of creativity, you can kinda sort of make it work as a mode. The way you do it is you set up a custom match, choose a map, and tell the survivors to dress as props native to this map. Then you disable their scratch marks through the command console and set a timer. Depending on the number of survivors, it can be anything from 5 to 10 minutes. The survivor's job is to stay undetected until the timer runs out, and your job is to find them. Simple as that. The Dead by Nextbot mod. Now this comes much closer to an actual game mode. For those of you who don't know, Nextbot is an AI system which makes NPCs behave in a certain way, like for example following a player around the map. Some time ago, using Nextbot became super popular in Garry's mod. People would create flat cursed images and applied the Nextbot logic to them, making them chase the player wherever they go and kill them once they caught up. It produces a super unsettling and creepy effect even if you're not playing yourself but just watching someone else's gameplay, and Dead by Nextbot perfectly captures this concept. It replaces the hillbilly with an image of the Smiler from Backrooms. To make him really scary, it reduces the cooldown of his attacks and removes all his sounds and red glow, leaving only an eerie ambience which starts playing whenever you're within 64 meters of him. For the best experience, it's recommended that you use this mod on the indoor maps, because it significantly darkens the lighting there and makes the jump scare effect even stronger.
I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there, so don't. Oh no! Holy shit, bro, you just gave me a heart attack.
Since the private server supported playing against bot killers, it was also recommended to do exactly that with this mod, because bot killers always knew where you were and were able to perfectly follow you no matter what, which made the Nextbot behavior even more believable. Finally, we got the Realism mod. The actual name of this mod is the third person mod, because it zooms in the survivor's camera and makes it look like the killer's POV. I call it Realism because of how I personally like to use it. I would load into the match without any perks and then use the command console to remove the killer's terror radius, chase music, and red glow. The setup gives you a sense of what Dead by Daylight chases would feel like in real life.
You gonna vault? She's gonna... What? Bro! I'm running into things. No! Wow, that was a close swing. That's kind of what it looks like when the killer is trying to cut your face with a knife.
Sadly, all these mods didn't stay around for too long, because in January of 2023, due to the lack of support, the private server became defunct, rendering all the mods that were created for it unusable. And unfortunately, as of now, this is where the story of modding in Dead by Daylight ends. However, it left such a huge impact on the community that even Bhvr themselves recognized it. How do I know this? Well, mainly because when in the beginning of this year they started introducing new game modes, or as they call them, modifiers, it turned out that all of them were partially or completely based on the popular community mods. The first ever modifier they created was Lights Out. It came out on the 7th of February of this year and it was supposed to be a scarier version of the classic DBD. For this, it made the maps much darker and filled them with a super thick fog which allowed players to see only several meters ahead of them. On top of it, it also removed the killer's terror radius and the survivor's scratch marks, making both sides guess where their opponent was. Sounds kinda familiar, right? Well, that's because this is almost word for word the description of the aforementioned Nextbot mod. The second modifier, called Chaos Shuffle, came out about 3 months later. The idea behind it was to make old players load into games with random perks and have them figure out their builds on the fly. Simple and effective concept. And once again, Bhvr didn't come up with it themselves. This time they took inspiration not even from a mod but a perk roulette challenge, which people have been doing since 2017. The point of this challenge is to spin a wheel with a bunch of perks written on it and equip whatever the perks the arrow is gonna point at. And then you try to figure out the synergy between them, if it even exists. I first saw this challenge in one of Monto's videos. At that time, he was using some ancient-looking spinning wheel website where, as far as I understand, he had to manually insert all the perks for each specific character. As time went by, dedicated perk roulette websites started to appear. They had cooler interfaces and the ability to quickly select perks or exclude them from the randomizer. And then, years later, Bhvr finally figured out that they could make a separate game mode out of it. Better late than never, I guess. Their next modifier was My Little Oni, and compared to the previous two, it was a much more substantial thing. It shrunk the survivors down to like 50 centimeters and had them compete against the giant Oni who was the size of a building. This modifier was really a breath of fresh air for the game, and a lot of players were praising Bhvr for doing something that was actually creative. Except for it wasn't, because literally the same thing was implemented on the private server back in 2022. You can still find videos featuring this mod on Kaito's and Super Alf's channel. And don't you even get me started on the 2v8 mode. This thing has been possible ever since the leak of the dev build, and that's almost 5 years. Mod by Daylight, the official Discord for the private server, still has a mod that increases the size of Cold Tower and Suffocation Pit to be able to accommodate 10 players. But alright, Cozy, we get it. Bhvr steals mods from the community and makes them the official game modifiers. How is this a problem? After all, it's their game, which means that all the mods created for it technically use their intellectual property, so isn't it kind of fair that they get to use them as the base for their modifiers? Actually, yeah, it is fair. Plus, this way they make these mods accessible to a wider audience and not just a bunch of nerds like myself who like to play with the in-game files, and that's good too. In fact, if I was the main guy at Bhvr, I would tell the gameplay department to double down on adapting the community mods for modifiers, because there's just so many absolutely mind-blowing mods that no one talks about and that would transition perfectly to the live servers. Like, for example, why don't they introduce the zombie apocalypse mode? It's a super rare mod that I came across once or twice on YouTube. game. It makes you go against an AI-controlled nemesis who spawns like 20 times more zombies than usual, to the point that they occupy the entire map. Your task is to evade both them and the killer for as long as possible. For this you get an infinite flashlight, which you need to use to quickly stun zombies and prevent them from cornering you. Another thing they could do is the killer deathmatch. A couple of years ago, this mod was a super huge thing. Personally, I never had a chance to try it myself, but dude, I was instantly sold when I saw other people's gameplay. Basically, it makes you play a PvP match as one of the ranged killers against another ranged killer. You both get a health bar, and your job is to keep hitting each other until one of you finally runs out of health points and dies. In my opinion, both of these mods are absolute masterpieces and have the potential to attract as many people as the 2v8 mode. The only problem with it is that by going this direction, Behavior are gonna be years behind the modding community, because all these mods have been around for years at this point. So far it has worked for them, but that's not gonna last forever, because I know for a fact that right now a group of dedicated modders is actively working on setting up a brand new private server, and they already have tons of cool and fresh mods listed on their Discord server. So there is a huge chance that soon Behavior is not gonna be able to get away with simply reusing some old mods.